think that's enough about the Writer's Center, so I want to hand off to our moderator, Adrian Gaston Garcia, to take over and do the rest. So Adrian, thank you so much, and thank you to all of our panelists as well.
Thank you so much, Kevin. That was a smooth handoff, so I appreciate that. And I am a huge fan of the Writer's Center. I've actually benefited. I took a workshop last year with Saul Hernandez, Focus on Grief, and that one of the poems I wrote in that workshop actually got published. So yeah, so I have live testimony as to the great work that the Writer's Center does. So I'm super excited to be here in conversation with these three amazing authors who I know individually and personally, and it's always interesting to talk about the work. And today's focus is really going to be talking about just the path as to how they got to their book publications, as well as kind of like handling all the things that life throws at you on top of trying to write masterpieces, which they've all been able to accomplish. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our panel here. We're going to start with my left here, with Diana Rojas, who is the author of Litany of Saints, the forthcoming novel, They Hold Grudges, that's going to be published through Arte Público Press in 2026. They're also working on a children's book that's also going to be published called Glada's Big Green Coat by Piñatas Books in 2027. Diana has stayed busy ever since she finished her first book. Her essays are featured in Grit and Gravity, the Washington Independent Review of Books, Latino News Network, and the Anthology of America's Future, also with the Washington Independent Review. She lives and is taxed and unrepresented in Washington, D.C. It's important that we say that. So welcome, Diana. Lapera is a Guatemalan-American author and educator. Her debut novel, Semilla, Finds Her Quetzal Voice, is the International Latino Book Award winner, the 2025 International Literacy Association Honored Book Selection, a Jane Addams Book Award finalist, an American Library Association's 2025 Feminist Book Project Selection, and was named one of the best books of 2024 by the School Library Journal, the New York Public Library, and others. Just so you know, her superpower is teaching middle school by day. She is currently working on the adult historical fiction novel set in 1970s in Guatemala, which she previewed for us a little bit, which I'm really excited about. So be sure to talk to her about that. And then at the far end there, we have Ursula Villarreal-Moura, who is a native of San Antonio, Texas. Shout out to Tejanos. Ursula is the author of 2 works of fiction. Her debut novel, Like Happiness, is a finalist for the Rodolfo Anaya Fiction Award, shortlisted for the Crook's Corner Book Prize, and was selected as an Indie Next Pick and named a Best Book of 2024 by NPR. San Francisco Chronicle, ELLE, and Them. Math for the Self-Crippling, her flash fiction short collection, was a small press bestseller and has been taught in numerous universities. Her stories, essays, and interviews can be found in LitHub, Electric Literature, Story, Alta Journal, and The Rumpus, amongst others. She is a longtime advocate of reading diversely and of land back. Please join me in welcoming her. And my name is Adrian Gaston Garcia. That's important to share. I go by AGG, but you can call me whatever you feel most comfortable with. I'm a queer Latina poet. I run Los Wikis podcast, which is a podcast where we interview queer Latina authors, which we had the pleasure of chatting with Ursula. And I also run Tintas DC, which is a Latina writers group here in the DMV, which is about 130-ish writers who write all sorts of stuff. So we're all members of Tintas, and there's some folks in the audience. And if you want to learn more, come talk to me about that after this. But there was a lot in your bios, and all the accolades that we need to make sure that we lift up and cheer on. But I'm sure there's stuff missing there. So I want to ask 2 questions to kind of get to know a little bit about you more. The first question is, there's this very famous dicho in Spanish that goes, Dime con quién andas y diré quién eres. What does that roughly translate to?
Tell me who you hang out with, and I'll tell you who you are.
Which is very important. Your parents usually tell you that in order to make sure they check you to make sure you're hanging out with the right company. But what's not in your bio is like, who is your community? So tell us who do you hang out with? Who is your community?
Wow, who's my community? Wow, this is a really hard question. My husband, my kids, those would be my people. I just came back from a vacation with my husband and my kids and their plus one. So I'm really kind of, I wouldn't say family that, but I'm familyed right now. But more than that, I am one of 33 cousins. We're a pretty big Hispanic family. 33 cousins. I'm the 7th born in the United States, and we're in Costa Rica and in mostly the East Coast. And those would be my people, even though I don't see them often. They're the ones that haunt me, the ones I write about, the ones whose stories I feel are part of the American dream my parents set out to find and part of my America.
For me, I would say, well, first my parents who came out. Whenever I see that the registration for an event is a little low, I call them. I'm like, you have to come. But yeah, my parents, my family, so I have a 2-year-old and an 8-year-old. And my 8-year-old, so I've become friends with her friends' moms who are also in the audience. So shout out to friends as well. And also different writers that I've met, well, both that I haven't met. I feel like everything I write is really informed by the connections I've made with other writers, both who I've met in person, right, like everyone here, but also in the online spaces as well. And so I feel like through writing, I've also gotten to know a really just large global writing community as well, and the 500 plus middle schoolers I hang out with.
So definitely my family are my people, but I would say there's a lot of people that I consider my community. Definitely the queer community, definitely activists. I think people who care about people around the world are my people. I really do feel like everyone is my family. I was raised to always care about others and to do volunteer work, and so anyone who cares, and I think now in this political climate more than ever, we do need people to care about people outside their family, or be involved in protecting people who maybe don't look like you or don't act like you. So people who stand up for trans rights, people who stand up for the people who are being detained by ICE or kidnapped. People who care about the suffering in Gaza. All of those people are my people. I feel really connected to the larger world, even though I spend a lot of time in Maryland. But I think the internet and through just different networks and organizations, it's really easy to learn about people and to become involved and to be just really proactive in protecting each other.
And I think community is super important, especially nowadays where there's just a lot going on. So thank you. When we start thinking about the journeys that each of you took as writers to become writers, one question I like to ask is, when did you first realize that language or words have power, and how did that connect you to becoming a writer? And if you could tell us that story. We'll start with Ursula, that's going to work, even though you just finished talking.
Yeah, so the first time when I was around 4 or 5 years old, I was with my grandmother, and she was the person who sold cascarones in our neighborhood, which are like confetti eggs. And she wanted me to get involved and help her, so she told me I could write a sign that says cascarones. And so she wrote it down so I knew how to spell it, and we stenciled it, and then I got to take the marker and fill it in. And it was a really big word for someone who's 5, and I didn't know how to read and write yet. That came really much later for me as a bilingual child. And, so I did the work, and to me it was just these letters, but once we put it out, people started flooding the house to come buy cascarones, and people were like, how many dozen can we buy right now? Will there be some tomorrow? And I was really taken. I thought I just did this really menial task, but it had such an impact on the neighborhood, and so many people were interacting with my grandmother. So that's definitely the first time I learned that words had power. The first time that I learned that my words had power was probably in middle school when I would write some essays for class, and then teachers would look moved by it. And I was really shocked because, it was just something that I thought about deeply, obviously, and cared about. But, I didn't labor over it at home for 3 weeks or anything. I wrote it during the assigned time. And when, my work would get read to other people or to the class, I was shocked. I'm like, what do you mean? That's my stuff. Like, those are my ideas. So that was a really memorable experience. And I really liked it. And I thought maybe, maybe the way I've been affected by books is something that I can do for other people as well.
Do you remember any of those essay topics, or just so we could go?
So I wrote about a classmate, but I didn't name the classmate. And the classmate was going through a lot of struggles. And the classmate's favorite snacks were Cheetos and Doritos. And so...
I get it.
So I named the essay Cheetos and Doritos. And then it was all about my friend and struggling at home and whatever. I changed his name so that, his privacy would be. And my teachers were like, Cheetos and Doritos are fantastic. This is a fantastic essay. So it's really, silly in retrospect. But even my parents still talk about Cheetos and Doritos. They're like, that was the moment we knew you were going to be a writer.
I'm going to bug you and I want to see that essay. I'm going to call your parents. Anna, how about you?
So for me, I didn't really start taking myself seriously as a writer, actually till I took a class here. So my book was written here during like a short story class. So it started as like a 10-page short story that I wrote back in 2021. All the classes were still on Zoom, and I took this year-long short story writing class. And that's when I first developed the idea for the book. But I knew I liked writing, and I really didn't like much else. I was always, as my parents can attest, I was always a straight C- student. I didn't really do a lot of homework, even though I liked essay writing, but I didn't care enough to do it all the time or to do it really well. I just, I liked it. But I remember in 5th grade, we had a 1-week poetry unit, and there wasn't, I forget what the prompt was, but me and all the other little 5th graders, we got to sit outside in the courtyard, and I remember exactly what I wrote. I've only shared this once before, but I remember I entered the clear blue opening shadows of the Earth's territory. And I feel to this day I still don't know what that means, but 11-year-old me thought nobody could write something better than this. And so that's when I thought I was going to be a poet. And all the other kids were really impressed too, because they started to ask me if I would write poems to kids that they had crushes on. So my first career in writing was these creepy love poems that I'd write anonymously in exchange for candy, probably. I did have a lot of cavities when I was young. But that was the first time, and then I didn't take it seriously until 25 years later.
Well, you were hustling at a young age, writing those. Are you still in business for these anonymous love poems for people are asking?
I'm not going to say no. It depends. My taste in candy has changed, so it depends. It depends what you're offering.
So that there's other services that we could offer. So, cool, Deanna.
I've always told stories. In fact, if you ask my parents, they would say I made up a lot of stories, and I would recount everyday things and just embellish them, just make them nicer. But I guess one of the interesting things about being the child of working class immigrants is that you don't come home and say, what I'm going to be? I'm going to be a writer of stories, because that's neither practical nor does it pay the rent. So I became a journalist, which was, and I swear to you, I did not embellish as a journalist. I was really straight out. And I was also very dutiful, and I write my stories, and then I had kids, and the kind of journalism I was doing, I don't know if others ever hear me say this, was just boring stories that nobody was reading, but I was doing them dutifully. So writing fiction is my act of rebellion, the end of my middle-age crisis, where I decided, my midlife crisis, where I realized nobody was even looking at me. I could have done whatever I wanted. Maybe I wouldn't have paid the rent with fiction, but I could have done it. So I stopped doing journalism, I stopped taking freelance, I stopped writing boring stuff, and I started writing stories again. And that's all I do now. I sit around writing stories. Sometimes I go back. I do still like writing nonfiction a lot. I go back and I write nonfiction, and I don't embellish anymore the nonfiction. I embellish the fiction a lot. I don't embellish the nonfiction, but I found that you can tell stories without making stuff up and make them beautiful and make them stories that other people will want to relate to and want to hear about.
I think it's so interesting that you know, as a kid, you embellish your stories. Was there someone in your life that you were following in that? Because I feel like in my family, there's a lot of embellishers. To this day, there still are. I'm just like,
Maybe subconsciously, I was a huge reader. I always had my nose in books, and I've always almost exclusively read fiction. So picking up, let's say, Little House on the Prairie, which I loved all of them. And hearing somebody tell the story of something that I didn't even know. I'd never even been to a prairie. I wouldn't know what a prairie was if I fell face first in it. I realized, I could make up a story about a prairie. And maybe it's the swamp in front of my house. And it opened up worlds for me. So whether I was following someone or not, I think I was just following my own dreams and expanding my world, my very small world.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you. You all touched upon family as being center of your community. And a family can be very tender and funny, and writing about family can also be very risky. And it is interesting because reading each of your books, there's so much stuff that feels inspired by, maybe, question mark. I know there's some family in the audience, so. But how do you decide which part of your personal lives kind of show up in your work, in your writing, and which parts don't? This is a question that we kind of get a lot in the writers group. And let's start with Anna. That's cool.
So it's interesting because since my book takes place in a middle school, I had a lot of people at the school I work at ask me, is this me? This is me, right? And there was there's literally one line where I name, there's an IT person and he's named as an offhand comment, and in the book his name is Mr. Dave. In real life his name is Mr. Dave, and I was like, that just fits, this is not about him, but it just fits. And when the book first came out, he literally had tears in his eyes, and he said, nobody has ever written a book about me. And, I didn't have the heart to tell him, and I said, well, it's based on, it's not, because I was I don't know, did he read the whole thing? It's not.
It's about money, it's not about Mr. Dave.
So it's really funny to have to tell people, no, it's not about you, but it's maybe inspired by this and that. But I definitely based the character of Manny on I think on a lot of people I know, but the big difference between us is that, at the start of the book, it's this girl who she desperately wants to thwart her mom's plan of taking her to Guatemala by her 13th birthday. For me, I always loved going. I always looked forward to going. It was always somewhere I wanted to be. So in that sense, I made her different enough that I could write about her without worrying about, is this like me, is this not? But definitely, the family in in the story definitely is based on my own, certain characteristics. But I would say, my parents can speak to it more. I know they've said before that they definitely identify with the characters. But it's a little bit, I would say it's a little bit of everything. But there's I definitely wouldn't call it like autofiction by any means, but it is fun to see like how many people like see themselves in the book, and also the way we were talking about this, how people that you weren't sure how they would respond to it, like they find a connection with it. So that's been a fun thing to discover since the book's been out.
No, and it's interesting because like the character, I'm like, oh, is this Anna? Is it Anna? Like, could it be Anna? Like, it was really fun to read that, and it's nice to kind of hear like that there could be distance to the character, or just a different way of kind of exploring the way that their mind works, and that's contrast for you. Deanna?
Before I rebelled against journalism, and I started this by saying I was going to write a memoir of immigration, and I was going to tell the story of my family when they came to the United States, and believe it or not, they all lived in the same house in Paterson, New Jersey.
How many people?
I mean, like 25, and people would always come. There was always a revolving door of people. So I interviewed all of my uncles and my mom and everybody who had survived the original. And they all told a very different story of the same story. And I was like, I'm not going to be the arbiter of truth here. This is not what I wanted to do. I wanted just to tell a story. So I ditched it, and I was like, screw it, I'm going to write fiction. That's where the rebellion started. But I took inspiration from their stories. Nobody in my book, my book is a collection of novellas. This was just the first novella. Nobody in any of my novellas, no, that's a lie, one person, besides one person, is somebody I know. Everything is a composite of people I know. And I just had a friend who wrote an article about writing about family. She wrote it in Poets and Writers, and she said that she started writing her novel, and she had to write about a brother and sister, and the only brother and sister she'd ever known was her and her brother. So she used them as a model, but that her story quickly outgrew them, and so she was able to shed them and create new characters. And I found that really interesting because my story didn't outgrow the people I knew. It was like I was a child again. I wanted to embellish their stories because everybody that I knew in the world I lived in sort of really played according to the rules. There were rules and you followed them, and there's so many strictures to what you could say and how you could react to any given situation that I would write these characters, and maybe the situation that I was talking about was real or somewhat real, and then I would say, what would happen if X said, no, screw it, I'm going to live my own life, which as far as I know, not many people in my family did. What if this person said, I'm not going to take that for an answer, or this person said, I really want to be somebody else, and it expanded beyond that. But like Anna says, people still see themselves in the story, and they still see others. The annoying characters are like, we know which aunt you're talking about. I'm like, that's not true. But people can see what they want to see, and that's the beauty of fiction. It's different. You tell one story, and it's absorbed differently by everybody who reads it. So I've stopped making excuses. I've stopped saying, no. I do push back when cousins start saying, is this a history of our family? I'm like, oh my God, no. None of us were that outspoken. But I've stopped saying no, because you can see what you want to see.
Yeah, and I think that's, especially like with literature that is not fully representative of us. I mean, there's a gap missing, and people are just used to reading like certain types of books, and then they come across something that speaks so personal to them, right? That like kind of like addresses like their history and their experience. I think they're just so hungry to see themselves like, oh yeah.
I mean, there's, I think, very few or none of Costa Rican immigrants, and so I have had Costa Ricans come out of the woodwork and say, what does someone say to me? Do all Costa Ricans have the same trauma? And I'm like, maybe, but there's not that many of us, so.
Thank you. Ursula?
Your book, Indiana, was the first book I read about Costa Rican, so I was really excited when I was reading it. I was like, I get to learn new things.
You must think we're all really traumatized.
No. So I I don't think you're all traumatized. But I think that when I was writing, I didn't try to portray my family per se. I just tried to portray a nuanced family that happened to be Chicanx. And that was more interesting to me. So my book is fiction, and I didn't live these things. Like, some of the scenes are in places I've never even been before. And so I kind of would just think, how would a dad, and it could be any dad, a positive, like my dad, my uncle, like somebody else, like how would they respond given their background to this situation? What would they say? What would they do? And that's how I came up with the parents in mind. And I've never tried to portray any of the characters, even my protagonist, as really wonderful or really horrible. I'm really, especially in this book, really interested in the gray where like good people do bad things and bad people do good things. And so it leaves some readers really uncomfortable, but I think for a majority of people, it's realistic. It's the life they know, because life is so complicated and it's not necessarily full of, villains and saints. It's people doing the best they can.
No, and I think your character is like that. Like, it's just like so perfect, like imperfectly perfect. Where it's just like, oh, like I would be like that too. Like it totally resonates. We're in Latina Heritage Month. There's a lot of pressure for us to like showcase our culture, our language, our identity, and it feels like this is a time where we're kind of given a seat at the table to kind of like show off and flex and showcase our work. And with that comes like this additional pressure. So like, I'm writing as a Latina person. Like, is my work, like who is my work for, and like who does it speak to, and what kind of obligation do I have to my identity and the people who will pick up this book? And I just want to learn a little bit more about what that process was like for you, because each of your books are just, they have very strong people who are, strong characters who are, shared experiences that a lot of people like myself and people who look like me can kind of relate to. So I'm just kind of curious as to like, how did you juggle like expectation while also staying true to like story? Do you want to kick us off?
That was really hard for me, honestly. I had to tuck that feeling away that I was representing. My second novella deals with machismo and marianismo. And I had a cousin say to me, who came to one of my readings, "You made Costa Rica look bad." And I felt really, really, really bad when he said that. And I didn't set out to make Costa Rica look like anything. Costa Rica was the setting. And I was talking about sexism and machismo, marianismo, and how it affects women. And if I had stopped to think of what would people think of all Latinos because of this story I was telling, I probably wouldn't have written it. Ditto the last story, which is about a naturalized American who goes back to Costa Rica because his brother is a terrorist. I mean, that's actually a fringe story in a country that didn't have that much violence, and I was a little embarrassed to tell it. Like, you sometimes feel responsible for perpetuating all the myths, and you only want the pretty ones to come out. You don't want to tell the horror stories. So I had to stop thinking about that. And my publisher, lucky for me, my publisher is a Latino publisher. So I didn't have to be anything for them. I didn't have to be the token. I didn't have to represent. I wasn't special for them in that way. I was one of many. And that was helpful for me.
And out of curiosity, like, how was the book received, like, in terms of like some of the hard stuff that you felt like the last chapter? Has anyone come up to you and been like, hey?
Cousin.
Oh yeah.
Besides my cousin, besides my cousin, no, I actually had, when I took it to Costa Rica and had an event there, I was extremely nervous. I really, really didn't want to do it, but my mom wanted me to do it, and I'm such a good girl.
Parents.
So, I was afraid. And the truth was that I think that fear is something we have here as a minority group. Because in Costa Rica, everybody just took the stories at face value. They understood the value of the story. They didn't think I was misrepresenting. They weren't worried what other people would think. Mostly I got people coming up to say, oh, I can relate. I can relate to the story. Which, yeah, I think that was my takeaway from that.
That is interesting, because I feel like, you know, I'm very critical of the US, right? And then I'm just like, oh, but Mexico's great. You know, like, so just like, I feel like there's something there, yeah. Anna?
So I would say it's something that I cared a lot about at first, and then I just did it. You know, with, as we all know, like writing is such a long process, and publishing is such a long process. So when the book comes out, it's very, very different than when we first started or what some of those first drafts were. So I think in those first drafts, I feel like I almost created like a caricature, you know, because I hadn't read anything like what I had written, like the storyline or anything, and so I was really obsessing over it. And then it made me feel like I did also growing up, because I'm just half Guatemalan, and on my dad's side they're like German, Filipino, Hawaiian, and so I never grew up like fully one thing. And I feel like even like my family in Guatemala, they always made fun of my Spanish, even though I speak Spanish and English, but you know, whatever. But even like people here who spoke Spanish a lot better than I did, and you know what I mean? It was this very like, oh, you're just half, you're not really, you know, and so I feel like growing up that bothered me, and then I just stopped caring about it, because I realized when I finally really honed in on who the character was, she is like Filipino, Hawaiian, Guatemalan, someone who does live in many cultures. I realized no one can tell me that she's not enough of something, because this is at least rooted in my experience, and so I felt like I created a character that a lot of people could relate to, that like no one could touch, you know what I mean? Like no one can make fun of her, at least not for the reasons, you know, that I said before. And so I just like, once I let go of that, and once I got feedback on it, I feel like I was able to kind of let go of that. And it's not something I worried about in the end, because you know, a lot of the things that happened to her in the book, it's not necessarily like a Guatemalan experience or this experience. It's sort of the experience of a multicultural kid living in the U.S. And also one of the themes in it, and that another writer, she's the one that put this into words, but I really responded to it. She said, what I really love about your book is it reminds me of, it asks the question, how do we write about a place in the absence of that place? And so I feel like I really, really loved that, and that looks different for every single person, right? And so, but I did, you know, I let go of it, but also with writing, I don't know if you all had this, like, you know, if all of us had a similar experience, but it's not always, like, you also face a lot of obstacles, a lot of people that are not really trying to help you along the way. Like, I did meet with an agent once. This is way before I found my agent and my publisher. And it made me so mad that she said this, because she was also Latina, so I went into it thinking like, oh, this is going to be great, we're going to be best friends. It's not true. She said, your writing is tacky and no one is going to like this.
Oh my.
I'm just bringing that up because, I mean, this is Chisme too. And so I almost cried, but then I told myself, I was like, you teach middle school. This is nothing. Like, this is not going to make her cry. But you know, I kept that with me, and maybe it did make the book better. I read through it and I was like, am I tacky? Like, it's awful. But then, you know, I mean, if someone does think it's tacky, I mean, other than like a few random like trolls on Goodreads, like, no one's called it tacky since it came out. But so where was I going with that? But the point is, like, you're always going to, there's always going to be people like that test you, but you just like, maybe it's like once you hit a certain age or once the book's been out, but like you're just writing a story that's like very particular but also very universal, and someone's going to connect with it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Wow, what a choice of words. I'm also pro-tacky, so I love tacky. So, yeah.
Maybe that's why you like my book.
Ursula.
Wow. I'm going to also share Chisme.
Yes,
but
that's
first,
the point.
okay, so first I want to say, so I'm married to a Brazilian, and a lot of times people speak to him in Spanish, and he's like, I speak Portuguese, I don't speak Spanish, like that's, the language of Brazil is Portuguese. And, there's countless times where just, living anywhere in the United States where I felt like all Latina people were being painted with the same brush stroke. Like everyone's Mexican or everyone's this or, and we have so many distinct cultures, and there's of course overlap. But I thought, I really need to write a book where I can, not necessarily instruct white people, but like pay homage to all the different cultures. Or, have people interact with each other in a way that, maybe they, both speak Spanish, but their Spanish is really different. Or, they don't understand one word from each other. Or, they eat different foods and, all of this. And so I knew the story I wanted to tell and also aimed to do that. So the protagonist is Chicana, the writer is Boricua. There's people of, different races and ethnicity in the book, and I really wanted to show that, all those places of overlap, as well as, sometimes really uncomfortable. She meets him and the first word he says to her is coño, and she's like, is that positive or negative? Like, what does coño mean? So I was really interested in all the little nuances, the gray, and I was also really inspired, before my book came out, one of the books that I read that had a big impact on me was In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado. It was a book that shook me, and for various reasons, because I feel like she's very honest in the book. She's not, not trying to depict anyone as a saint or a villain. And she's talking about really hard topics, especially in the queer community, where it's so easy to malign people that are different, but everyone maybe feels pressured at some point to put their best foot forward. And here she was telling a story in which there was some really unflattering stuff happening, and it's nonfiction. So it was a really vulnerable story that really moved me, and I thought, wow, but it's so successful. I had such a reaction to it. Other people had sold thousands and thousands of copies. Like, maybe there's something here in this vulnerability and in this honesty. And you don't have to agree with everything a person does in a book, but you can still have a really moving experience, a really relatable experience by, sharing something that is real, but maybe not the prettiest. And so I kind of felt that was an inspiration for sure. And it gave me a little bit, some courage, some bravery to do some things that maybe, people would have less than positive reactions to in my book.
Yeah, especially what the character goes through and all the hardship, and it's very gray, right? There's a lot of decisions to be made. No, thank you, and In the Dream House. In addition to these three books, also check out In the Dream House, one of my favorite books.
Oh, can I add my Chisme?
Oh yeah, please.
Okay,
Oh my God.
okay, so here we go.
Did you see how we all shifted?
So I had an agent read my book when it was very young still, and she said to me, oh, I love your book, but it reads a little bit like Sheila Heti, some of the, honesty, like some of the, some of the voice that comes through is like very particular to you, just like it is for Sheila Heti. She's like, but you're Latina, so you're not given like permission to write like this. So you're gonna have to find another agent, but if you have another book that doesn't do this, I'll take a look at it. But you know, you're just not allowed to do this. And she is. And so I took it back and kept looking for agents, and I found another agent, and like years later I found another agent, and then when my book was published and started getting some attention and some accolades, she sent me a DM on social media to be like...
On which platform, just so we know?
Well, it was back in the day with...
MySpace.
RCQ. ICQ. It was when Twitter was still Twitter before it became a letter. And she was like, congratulations. It's like, you know, I've seen it in multiple places. It's getting a lot of great attention. And I said, thank you. I didn't change the voice. But thank you. And she published one of my friend's books, you know? And so I didn't want bad blood. And, you know, I'm not a vengeful person or anything like that. But, you know, the very thing she rejected, as Anna was saying, like, had some success without her. So I'm really glad that she didn't get in my way.
Yeah. Oh my God, empowered you. I always think of the scene from like Pretty Woman, like big mistake. Big mistake. So everyone has shared a little bit of chisme about their publishing experience. Diana, como que falta?
Wow, I don't have that many chismes about my publishing experience that don't make me look bad. Okay, but in the interest of being vulnerable, I don't have an agent because I can't stand rejection. So I'm I'm listening to this and I'm like, you just guys are cementing my belief that I can't do this. I can't do this because if I did this, I would not be writing. So that's the only chisme I have. I'm a coward.
That is good cheese, man.
That is good chisme. Yeah. You're not a coward. Yeah. So you all have lives, you all have a lot of stuff that you edit, you teach, you have family. How do you balance all of that with writing? Like, what does that look like for you? Ursula, do you mind?
So when I was writing my book, I had a full-time job at a university, and I also had a part-time job at another university. And so I remember being like, when am I gonna write? This is crazy. I'm, at work between like 7:50 in the morning and like 8 o'clock at night. So I thought, I can get it done on my lunch breaks. Actually, no, thumbs down. People will text you and come into your office during your lunch break. It's not possible. So the only time that I really had was in the morning before I went to work. So I started putting my alarm at 5 a.m., which I think Alana still does, and writing. And there was a cafe, so I lived in a place that had a medical center for like doctors and like a lot of hospitals. And so doctors needed their espresso at 5 a.m. So I found a cafe that opened that early, and I would walk in the dark. I mean, it was dark. I had my mace, and would walk to this cafe at 5 in the morning, get there like 5:15, 5:30, and write from, by the time I had my little cafecito, whatever, 5:30 to about 7:30. And then I would walk and take a bus to work so I could be there about 7:50. And honestly, there were a lot of times I didn't want to wake up in the morning because I had like finished work so late and whatever. But I'm so glad I did it. I'm so glad that every morning, even if I wrote 10 words, even if I wrote edited a chapter and didn't write anything and just made something prettier, the day was set. Whatever happened at work, okay, I can deal because I got my writing done and I'm gonna do it again tomorrow. So that's how this book got written. And now I have a little bit more time, but it's if you eat an apple every day, the days that you skip eating an apple, you really miss the apple. Yeah. And it's the same thing for writing. If a day happens where I'm not writing something, it feels like, something's missing, or I forget to put my earrings on, oh my God, that same kind of thing. And so I really respond well and am a better person, a better friend, better, everything once I get my writing done. So it doesn't happen every single day, but it happens pretty often now.
Thank you.
So I have a very crazy writing schedule.
I want to hear it and be dramatic about it too.
But I have a 2-year-old and an 8-year-old who are not calm, and I also, I have a full-time job, which if anyone has ever taught, that you don't leave it at work. It's just constant. It's a 24-hour job. And I'll preface this by saying I really admire people who stay up late and are night owls and can work at night. I can't. After 8 p.m. I'm just tired. Even if I'm not asleep, I'm just tired. So my writing, it's actually started a little earlier, but I write from 3:30 to 5:30 every morning.
Oh my God! And you let your daughter do that?
I sleep, well, I need to go to sleep earlier, but usually between 10 to, but my goal, my early New Year's resolution, is to go to sleep by 8. Yeah, so I can get full, however many hours that is, 8 to 3:30. But the reason is it's quiet. It's guaranteed no interruptions, and like you said, even if, and I'm also a very slow writer, so it's not like I'm writing a lot, even, it's 2 hours, I'm not writing a lot. Sometimes I edit a single line for 2 hours, because I'm very much I edit as I write, which is maybe a bad habit, it's probably why it takes me so long to finish a project, but I just edit as I write, and so even if it's just a line, even if it's just editing a paragraph, it feels good. I'm tired, but it feels good. It's a line that wasn't there before, and so that really feels good. And for a long time, I was very frustrated at everything that keeps me from writing, and there's writers that write a book every year, and I finally said that's not going to be me. That's just not me. And this is, these are my writing circumstances. These are the parameters. So I just make the most out of those 2 hours in the morning, and as long as I have them and coffee, I'm fine.
Oh God, that is, I'm still stunned. I can't believe 3:30 to 5:30. I don't even know what I'm doing here at that time.
3:30, you said?
Yeah.
I know. Deanna, what does it look like?
Okay, picture me in a muumuu with a glass of champagne compared to this.
Pictured, it looks amazing.
This is my retirement gig, frankly. So after I said very flashily that I was not going to write anymore for all the journals I was writing for, it wasn't like I sat back and just let the muse come to me. I really needed to prove myself because I was a little embarrassed. You're trained to work all your life. So I do look at my computer screen at least once a day. But my writing life is that I tend to write my stories all in my head first, and then I transcribe them on the page. And to write them in my head, that sometimes means taking 5-mile walks, working out these things, talking as I write. People must think I'm crazy in my neighborhood because I will do that. And then I come and I transcribe it. And there's a lot of editing that goes on once you've transcribed it. And sometimes the muse ignores me for long periods of time. And I dedicate myself to reading during those times. And I just kind of read. I don't read as much when I'm writing because I don't want to be, I never want to be derivative. I don't want to, and it's inevitable that you're going to pick up stuff, so.
Yeah. No, it seems that, but it makes you happy though when you do.
Oh yeah, it's very joyful.
No, that's, I heard each of you say that too, when you write, you're happy. And there's a lot of stuff happening in the world right now, and we're about to switch over to audience Q&A, but before we do that, I want to ask you each to read an excerpt from your book, one that brings you some sort of joy or happiness that we could share with this group right now, because we do need that. So, Anna, do you mind going first, and we'll go to Ursula?
Sure, yes.
I love seeing an author just flip through their book. It's just
I have to find it because now that it's a new page, paperback, and I'm so used to the hardcover. But let me find it. Okay, and you'll have to stop me when it's time, because I did not time it.
No, you're totally fine.
So this is just it's really like a page into the book. It's a classroom scene, and it kind of sets up what the struggle, the initial struggle that the 12-year-old character is facing. But you can't tell me any of this because I'm 12 and life sucks when you're 12. You're not a little kid, but you're also not an adult, and all the grown-ups in your life talk about your body the minute it starts getting a shape. And what sucks even more than being a half Chinese, Filipino American, half Guatemalan who can't speak any ancestral language well, when almost every other girl in school has gotten her period except for you and your two besties, Kai and Connie. And everybody's looking at you like you're some little girl with no real life knowledge to go with those big, stupid, purple frame glasses. Glasses that have been bigger than my face ever since I was 8 and started wearing them because I'm myopic, which is a fancy way of saying things look blurry in the distance. Sometimes I wish a big, ugly meteor would come and destroy my glasses so I could get new ones, like those clear framed ones, the kind that would make me look like a grown woman, like a writer. Not gonna happen. Mommy picked my glasses, on rebaja of course, because paying full price is for rich folks and pendejos, and we are neither. I mean, I know she's trying. Mommy picked the color too after her favorite bird, the Quetzal, which is the national bird of Guatemala. Manuela, the most beautiful and rare Quetzal birds of all, have a purple sheen, she said the day she got them. That is if you're lucky enough to see a Quetzal, which is almost no one. But still, I think I'd have more luck spotting a real-life Quetzal or rolling my R's better than Abuelita than getting out of yet another ridiculous homework assignment. Manuela, you're up, says Mr. Jones, who teaches first period health and never says my name right. My cousin Cece told me that mispronouncing someone's name is an attack on their alma, and she's real smart and goes to college and says words like self-sustaining, consent, and Latinx, so it's gotta be true. Not to mention she can switch between English and Spanish so smooth, like that first Takis dusting on your fingers 3 seconds after you open a new bag and no one else's hands have been in it. Manuela, you must not have heard me, he says. Except I did. I just didn't do this stupid homework. Who gives 7th graders an assignment to describe their ideal partner? Really? Who, me? I point to myself and turn around, even though I'm in the last row. All I see are the healthy relationship posters the quarter 3 health kids made for Valentine's Day competition a few months ago. Except they look like they cut and glued them together with their teeth or something. Ania from the 3rd row picks off her nail polish, turns around and side-eyes me. I try to do it back, but she's like 12,000 times closer to becoming a woman than I am. I mean, she started wearing a real bra in 4th grade, and she can recite the Spanish alphabet backward, so there's that. She turns her head back toward the front of the class, sneaks out her phone, and checks her teeth on the reflection of her home screen. Must be nice to get to have boobs and a phone. In front of her is Hector, who looks at me like I just took his chocolate milk and French fry cafeteria money, and he's too scared to ask for it back. Connie kicks the side leg of my chair with the bottom of her Converse, all loud and obvious, careful not to mess up the lightning bolts she sewed on by herself. Manny, Kai whispers, all concerned every other sentence, like Mommy. But I don't want to go up there, even though my abuelita says I'm a Guatemalan Quetzal bird. You know, rare and powerful and stuff. And then I need to find my Quetzal voice. I don't really know what that means. Manuela, be a Quetzal like your tia Beatriz, she says on the day she has her memory, but also on the day she doesn't. What she means is be like her other daughter, Mommy's sister, apparently a real Quetzal of a woman who got on a bus one day in Guatemala and never came home.
Thank you.
Sure. So I why I picked that one. That's the first introduction into what the book's about, where this girl who finds these secret letters between her mom and who turns out to be a disappeared journalist, a disappeared feminist journalist writing like post Civil War Guatemala. But I picked it because to write like really heavy topics for your kids, for teenagers. You have to write with, you don't have to, but I like to write with a little bit of humor, just because, it's from a 12-year-old's perspective. So it's a way to make the really tough topics like approachable. So.
Thank you, that was beautiful.
I timed mine, I think mine is 3.5 minutes, so. Okay, all you need to know is our protagonist, Tatum, she wrote a fan letter to her favorite writer, he wrote back, they met, they're having a situationship. He just picked her up, got out of work, they're gonna go have some fun at a bookstore.
This is my dream, by the way.
I think you can see why she wants to hang out with this person, right? Okay, and she's talking to him directly, so the you is the writer. Okay. On a train ride from my work down to Union Square, you and I split a gigantic matcha bubble tea. We kept passing the plastic cup back and forth between us like best friends with brain freezes. Then I felt something else. It was your hand on my thigh, your fingertips grazing my kneecap under my skirt. Mateo, I have feelings for a woman, I said, as I grabbed the tea from you. You momentarily slid your hand back to your own leg. And for a moment you said nothing. You were hurt, but I had to get this confession off my chest. Here, take the drink, I said, to distract you from your shop. School children in uniform shuffled off the train with juice boxes and women in business suits filled the empty seats. What's her name? What do you like about her? You asked. Mayumi, she's teaching me Japanese. She's just... I couldn't even buy words to explain her to you. I was embarrassed yet proud to be feeling so infatuated, so full. Do you want me to meet her? Do you want to introduce us? You asked. I had never thought of introducing the two of you, but now the idea held no appeal. No, I shook my head. I'm just sharing about myself. I mean, it feels exhilarating, you know? You slurped the rest of our tea in one drag and squinted at me. Your squint disarmed me. It distorted your features to the point that you looked like an unsympathetic stranger. Now I can see you were judging me for gushing about a woman. Now I can see that's what accounted for much of the tension between us on that ride. Back then, it just felt like jealousy. Sure, I know the excitement that comes from meeting someone special, you said. A minute later, you shared with me that you had cheated on your girlfriend during our time at Cape Cod. I hadn't even known you were dating anyone then. You seemed relatively remorseful about your transgression, which helped me regard you as a decent person who had made a regrettable mistake. We moseyed down to the Strand that evening. In the fiction section, when I pulled a paperback copy of Fried Baked Tomatoes at the Whistle Stop Cafe by Fannie Flagg from the shelf, your horror was apparent. Are you interested in old Southern white lady novels? Mi vida, that's basura, you argued, while attempting to take the book from my grip. Have you seen the movie? It was a fave of mine growing up. I'm curious about the book and highly doubt it's basura. Don't be so damn judgy. When I told you I was getting it, you mimed blowing out your brains.
I'm going to read from my second novella, Las Tres Marias, and this is when American girls, 3 American sisters, moved to San Jose, and the reason you said to find something that was joyful, and the truth is, I was horrified, like, there's not that much joy in my book. So the joy in this is that this is the tiny little bit of autofiction, because when I was 11 years old, I moved to Costa Rica, and I have 2 older sisters, and we actually did this, except for the terrible parts. We could do the terrible parts, okay? There we go. Las Tres Marias. The Arce girls were each born almost exactly 12 months apart. They so resembled each other that people mistook them for triplets. Maybe one had more freckles, the other more waves in her hair, and the other a little more flesh on her thighs. But to the unfamiliar, they were identical. Marisol was the oldest, followed by Pilar, then Lola. They were always together, sometimes walking around the neighborhood 3 abreast, or sitting on the low cardboard wall in front of their house, watching their new world go by. Everyone had seen them, taken note of them. The Arce girls were barely teenagers when they were labeled gringas, summarily accused of all the moral lapses attributed by Latinos to every single American woman. They were doomed to become sluts. It was only a matter of time. But they had no idea. Before they became gringas, they were just the Arce girls, 3 suburban sisters, and truly, Tres Marias. Maria Soledad, Maria Pilar, and Maria Dolores. They dressed alike until middle school, and after that, their similar outfits at least were in different colors. Their mother took obvious pride in their beauty. Their first world had been the Boston suburbs of neat Cape Cod houses with tidy lawns, bicycles, and hippie hops strewn overnight in driveways. Their social circle had enjoyed pizza parties, bowling, and roller skating. It was a comfortable, happy life. But when the American dream ran afoul of double-digit inflation and factory closings in 1981, their parents, Maria del Carmen and her husband Cesar, pulled up stakes and made a tactical retreat to the Costa Rica they had left in the 1960s, hoping to ride out the uncertain times and stretch their meager dollar savings to buttress more meager wages. They bought a little house in an unfinished subdivision some 4 miles outside of downtown San Jose. It was called Urbanización Florestal, but the name was aspirational. The brand new subdivision was devoid of mature trees, and saplings were staked like sentinels around the perimeter of a large patchy grass field that, it was hoped, would someday become the leafy Central Park Plaza of the new neighborhood. The Arce family arrived in August, the girls wearing polyester pantsuits, maroon for Marisol, sky blue for Lola, soft green for Pilar. They hauled more than a dozen suitcases out of the various cars of families and friends who had gone to greet them at the airport. Meanwhile, a small group of nosy neighbors stood around to wave their welcomes. There were lots of mute smiles and heads nodding toward the English-only speaking daughters of the newly returned couple. They were an oddity, and people were curious. Hours later, after the girls had fished out their prized skin-tight designer jeans and laid on their beds to work the zippers up, Calvin Klein for Marisol, Sergio Valente for Pilar, and Jordache for Lola, they headed out to sit on the cement wall to survey their new neighborhood. By then, the well-wishers were gone and the streets were practically empty. The only people out were some teenage boys on a park bench, gawking in their direction, and apparently too shy to go over to meet the girls. The gringas had landed. The boys on the bench eventually overcame their reticence. With each passing day, they would get more and more relaxed, and some weeks later, after Lola had lifted her head and nodded at them, they finally made their approach. The group of 5 boys walked up to the girls and introduced themselves. There was only one who spoke enough schoolbook English to start the conversation. "Welcome to Costa Rica," he said. "My name is Aurelio." He introduced his friends, Lucho, Daniel, Pachico, and his kid brother Raul. Aurelio pointed at the laggards on the bench and rambled off more names. All boys with whispers of mustaches and chin hairs. The girls were pleased, flattered even. At 13, 14, and 15, they glowed in the promise of attention from the teenagers of the opposite sex. Their future in that new neighborhood, they decided that afternoon, looked rosy. Las tres Marias, las tres corazones, la que va en el centro no lleva calzones.
Now we want to open up to questions from the audience. And I could run the mic. But my foot fell asleep, so it's going to be a slow walk.
Don't be shy. Or if you want to share Chisme.
Oh yeah.
You can share Chismes.
No, I want to say I was impressed by you being a teacher and a writer, because I'm a middle school teacher.
Oh, yeah.
I teach Spanish for native speakers.
Oh, give me 1 second. I'm so sorry. It's because we're recording it, so it needs to be.
I'm
Oh,
sorry.
yeah.
So I was saying that I'm impressed that you're a middle school teacher and also a writer, because we don't have time to do anything.
Yeah.
And from what I heard of your writing, it sounds amazing, and I think all of you are great.
Thank you. It's hard, I feel like it's hard to find time, but it's like anything, like once you do it, it's such a part of your routine. The way working out used to be. Like I couldn't imagine not, and now like I feel that way with writing, you know what I mean? So it's just like, you just find like little moments to do it, even if it's like 20 minutes. Yeah.
How come you?
Thank you. Hi, sorry for coming in late, but I really appreciated hearing different points of views in the books. So maybe you can talk a little bit about how that choice came to be, or that preference, if it's for like all the writings that you do, if you lean one, or maybe try something new, like what made you do that? Yeah, thank you.
I can start. So I like that question because when I first took that class here at the Writer Center, I thought I was going to write for adults. I never considered writing like young adult or middle grade fiction ever. And it had started as a short story written in the past tense, still about a 12-year-old girl, but kind of someone looking back. And it was, the instructor was like, she was like, you write for kids, right? Like, this is a YA voice. And I was like, what? I almost took it as an insult, which was my own, talking about Chisme, that was my own, like, stereotype on what writing for kids was. And then that whole year, I just read, like, young adult stuff, and I was like, I can't believe I ever thought I would write something different. I loved it. And so I did. I started thinking I would write just for adult, which the short stories I write still are, but no, I feel like I found, it took someone else to like point it out.
I jumped in the deep end with this one because this is actually the first fiction I've ever written. So I guess I approached it like I would a journalism story. Like I was telling the story, and it took a little bit to separate myself from that responsibility I thought I had to, I don't know, like to not embellish. My novel coming out next year, however, is more embellished because I take the voice of a man, the protagonist is a man, and so I spent a lot of time thinking, trying to put myself in the mindset of a man. And I would hand it to men to read and say, does this sound like a man? No, sometimes not, but sometimes the men would say, not any man I've ever read. And I would rewrite it until it would sound like a man. So yes, I've been playing with new for my next one, which, when you write, it is a long process. You write one book, it gets published. Meanwhile, you're writing the next book. That's going to get published, but I'm on to the next one. And the next one is completely different again. I think the freedom that you can give yourself is to be whoever you want to be when you write.
So I think your question is a brilliant one, and I think the way you framed it, if I remember correctly, it was asking about voice. And for me, I think when I was writing this book, I knew the story I wanted to tell, but I didn't know the framing device or like the structure of it. And that frustrated me because I really think that books can be made or broken by the wrong structure. Like if the book is supposed to be in, if it's in, future tense or something and it really like doesn't work, it could be the most amazing story ever and it's just gonna fall flat. And so I thought, I've spent all these years, I've woken up at 5 a.m., I can't just let it fail because of the wrong structure. And so, so at some point I thought, okay, she's gonna tell the story to someone, but then I didn't know who. And I kept writing the story like, okay, she's directly addressing someone. And then I had another writer friend whose book just came out today, like 4th or 5th book came out today, and she read it, and she said, oh, she should be directing this to the author. Like they're no longer in contact, and now she's sending him this. And it clicked, and at first I was like, oh my God, that's so scary. Like to have the answer, and what if it doesn't work? And she's like, you gotta try it. And I tried it, and it did work. And then I felt like the whole book fell into place. Like the story I wanted to tell was going to be executed in a way that more people could access, because there's such an intimacy in talking directly to a person as opposed to, a third person story, which works for a million other things, but not this book that I wrote. So it was, a long process to figure that out, but, I spent so many years that, I don't know, thank goodness it all fell into place.
Thank you. We have time for one more question? Yeah. Thank you. Just, it's not that long.
My question is related to the vulnerability that comes with
creating something out of nothing and having to share it and open it up for critique. Because I've always struggled with like sharing something and then getting feedback, but you sometimes get amazing feedback. But then like, how do you know what feedback to take, what feedback to reject, and make it your own? Yeah, I guess that's the question.
That's a great question. Yeah.
I think that there's a few answers to that, and I think it's hard, especially when everyone has a different personality type. Like some people are really defensive and they don't want to hear any critique and they just shut down.
Why are you talking about me?
And then other people are like, yeah, sure. But the thing is, you can't take everyone. Like if everyone read all our books here, everyone's gonna have a different take on it. And so if you do something, adjust to every single person's opinion. Like you're gonna have a really disgusting pizza, right? Like it's gonna be like some pepperoni and some cheese and some like pickles and some like, it's gonna get like totally guacala after a while, right? And so you have to like, I think listen to your body, and if your body says like, yeah, and is leaning into it, great. But there's also times where, my agent told me something and it wasn't what I wanted to hear. And I took it for 2 or 3 days and I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe she's right. Like maybe I don't like it, but maybe she's right. Because I can't stop thinking about it in a way that makes me think that I'm processing this to accept it. So I think, it can be, depending on who you are as a person and, your openness or not to feedback, trust your gut, and also like be honest, because some of the feedback you get you might not like, but it actually might be helpful.
I'm a very self-conscious person, very self-conscious, and I tend to write in private a lot. And I've likened it to getting up on stage, taking off your clothes and saying, ta-da, what do you think, everybody? And that's a really hard thing to do. I haven't tried it yet. I'm imagining it's a hard thing to do. And I guess some people might give you their real opinion. And I guess you shouldn't get up on stage until you're ready to hear it. So if that means that you write privately for a long while and, you be the author of your poetry, whatever you're writing, and you hold it and you hug it for a little while and then you show it, you'll be more ready than if you write a sentence and say, what do you think? What do you think? Because you will start being influenced by what everybody thinks. And what did you call it? A horrible pizza?
Yeah.
It is a horrible pizza, but
Disgusting.
it's disgusting pizza. It has to be your voice.
Yeah, I don't have much to add. I definitely agree. And it's different for everyone. Once the book actually comes out, it is a very scary thing because you realize you can't take it back. You just can't, and there's people on Goodreads who, there are people on Goodreads. To be fair, I can count the number of bad things on Goodreads, but it's people who they just get a kick out of it. They go on, and you don't even know if they've read the book, but and I was feeling kind of down about this one person that wrote a 3-page thing about how much she hated the book, and I sent it to my editor, and they sent back the meme from the birdcage where he says, "Are you afraid of my Guatemalan-ness?" And that just made me feel better. I have to remember that there's people who they're just not going to get the book or for whatever reason. But I think one thing is that the people that are already there helping you put your work out there, whether it's an agent or an editor or a writer's group, I know what's helped me is showing it to as many people as possible. And so by the time it does come out, people you really trust have seen it. And so it just there's always going to be someone who doesn't like it, but it's almost like it's been vetted by so many people whose creativity and just who they themselves you just trust. And so, so that's what
I'm gonna go on Goodreads and just copy and paste. Is the International Latino Book Award winner, the 2025 International Literacy, or the Jane Addams Book Award finalist? I'm just gonna go copy and paste that. Thank you all. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to the Writers Center, Brandon and Zach, and to Haley from Wonderland Books for being here. Authors, you guys stick around and chat, so be sure to catch some Chisme that was too hot for the mic. And the one way that you can support writers is by purchasing their books. The books are here for sale. Purchase a book, get it signed, and spread the Chisme. Thank you all for being here.